Can Dying Light Crane survive Dying Light 2 if he swapped with Aiden? That is the question I'm here to answer. Hello Gooners, hope you're all doing well on this monumental day. This is the first video of one of many series that I wish to create for this channel. So it's basically nothing new, but essentially this series will take characters and put them into different worlds. I know Crane is already in Dying Light 2, but there's a huge difference between these two games. So before we can see how Kyle fares up against the city of Villedor, we need to set some ground rules. First, we must choose which version of Crane we're going to be using. So there's two choices. Either we can go back to the beginning where Crane was initially dropped into the city of Haran and use this version of him, or we can use the Crane that beats the mother by the end of the following. Before we can choose, we need something that makes sense for this event to even occur, and the best thing I could come up with is Tolga and Fatin. So I myself haven't done their quest in Dying Light 2, but for this video we're going to say that an interdimensional rift opened up for Crane, and when he enters it, he'll be teleported to the beginning of Dying Light 2. And for the sake of this video, we're just gonna say Aiden got delayed and arrived at a later time to the city. Now we gotta choose which version of Crane to use. For this video, I'll be using the endgame Kyle Crane of the following. I think it's only fair that we use the best version of him to compete against an arguably stronger world. There are many caveats to consider by using this version of Crane though. For starters, the reason why I didn't want to use the beginning Crane is because I kind of consider him and Aiden to be equivalent in terms of skills. We know Crane served as a Green Beret before becoming a mercenary for the GRE. On the other hand, we know Aiden has been trained for years to become a Night Runner. I guess for the better part, most of this can be argued, but I think both are relatively close. Although I would say Crane is superior in hand-to-hand combat and a better marksman. So even if their skills are on par with each other, I think their strength is on separate levels. I honestly think Aiden might be stronger than beginning Crane. In fact, I dare say endgame Crane is equivalent if not slightly stronger than Aiden. Now before you come after my head, please listen to my reasoning. We know as a kid, Aiden was experimented by Waltz. During this time, he was exposed to the virus that significantly altered his body. Waltz's goal was to create a person capable of merging with the virus. Whatever was done to Aiden as a kid, we know it increased his strength and speed. Now compared to Kyle, it's really hard giving any of them the win over the other, but for this video's sake, we're going to say endgame Crane is stronger than Aiden to not piss off people. Eventually, I will make an extensive video between who is stronger, but for now, we will just say Crane is stronger than beginning Aiden. So now comes the other part. This is where you're going to choose your own canon for the story of Crane. It seems the fan base is divided in choosing what happened to Crane after the end of the following. Some people say he turned but eventually got reverted back by the Baron, or perhaps it was a similar case to the Beast State Aiden. On the other hand, people say when Crane turns at the end that it was merely a hallucination of the virus. No matter what I choose, some people won't be happy, so Gunners, hear me out. For this video, the rules are simple. 1. Crane did not turn at the end. And 2, Crane will be able to go in and out of his beast form, but not the one we got from Dying Light the Beast, but rather the one we got when he took on the mother. Now he can't control when he turns, it just happens whenever. So I think this is fair since most of his fate was left ambiguous, and in the Beast we're kinda given this outcome. We're told he didn't fully transform and only fragments of his mind remained as the virus consumed him, similarly to Aiden's beast state. Let the story begin. Crane in shambles trudges his way up the sewers, stepping outside, the fading sunlight graces his face. At that moment, fear consumes his every thought. He was becoming one of the monsters that he had bestowed the mercy of death. His arms, his body, the very fabric that once made him human was fading, and in its place, a beast. The virus had nearly consumed him. Only the howling screams of the children still echoed ever so slightly in his head. But then a rift teared through the fabric of time and space itself. The light had been reborn, calling Crane in its sweet symphony of salvation. With this new spark of hope, Crane hobbled close to the rift, and just like that, the hero of Haran was teleported to the city of Villedor. The shock of going through the rift prevented him from turning. However, Crane would pass out and the true battle would begin in his mind as he fought to stay human. There we go. Now that Crane has had his little stroke, we can finally answer the question. So with Dying Light 2, entire new infected variants were created. So let's pin Crane against these zombies and see how he fares against them. We have the Howlers. I don't think there's much of a difference between these infected and the Screamers from Dying Light. They are both weak, the only major difference is that Howlers are more common than Screamers and they spawn just about anywhere. I don't think Crane would struggle much against them. He'd just have to be extra careful, especially at night. If he lets one of them scream, then he'll have a horde of volatiles up his ass. Overall, Howlers wouldn't have much of an impact. Spitters. Much doesn't need to be said for these guys. They are extremely easy to dispatch. In fact, I dare say they are weaker than the Toads. All you have to do is close the distance and boom, it can't do much of anything. Sure, more of them are found just strolling around in the city, but honestly, they don't pose much of a threat. The Banshee or Hags. So for the Banshees, as we saw in the Beast, they aren't really much of a threat. Yeah, they can be annoying to deal with, but if you isolate them from the other infected, they're pretty much useless. However, the Hags would be a little bit more challenging, as it can turn foe or friend into the infected. First, these Hags would be challenging, but after he fought like one or two, he would easily take them down. But compared to the others so far, the Hag would be mid-level difficulty, if you will. Chargers. They wouldn't be much of a threat. I almost considered not even putting them in this video. Elemental Gooners. Now for these things, I think Crane would possibly struggle a bit. Now don't get me wrong, Crane can use melee weapons like a beast. However, depending how you play the story, guns are the primary way Crane kills the infected. He no longer has said guns, so he'll have to, for the better part, fight with them using crafted enhanced weapons. He could also get a bow or a crossbow, but whatever. I think these elemental goons aren't much of a difference compared to the Jerkmate Tier 3 Gooners of Dying Light 3, the ones with the firefighter outfit. They'd just be a pain to kill. The Drowners, these guys would probably be a bit challenging. They can swarm you and go boom boom. Effective at fighting and lethal. Sure, Crane would be able to survive, however, the Drowners have no counterpart in Dying Light. It's essentially a viral and a bomber combined. That might be a little challenging for him, but yeah. He would deal with it. The Revenants. Yeah, these infected are like bosses found around in Villador. I think the hardest part for Crane to deal with against these guys would probably be its reviving ability. Other than that, Revenants aren't much of a threat. If you know how to fight these things, then they are relatively weak, and I don't think Crane would struggle much. So basically consider this. All these infected are weaker in terms of their ability, strength, damage output, and health compared to the freaks of nature that Crane had to fight in the countryside. Also, this video wouldn't consider the DLC Bloody Ties, as I haven't played that yet, so no big boy demolisher. But it'd be the same case. The Howler and the Behemoth are arguably stronger, but I don't know, I haven't fought it yet, so I guess you decide who is stronger. But yeah, Crane would probably goon all over these infected. So now we begin with the actual story. So things would have to be moved around for Crane to even go after the PKs and Waltz and his Renegades, but I think Crane would dog walk all over these guys. Maybe the Renegades would give him a hard time since they have been enhanced by the inhibitors. But now comes a good question. Would Crane be injecting himself with inhibitors? Well, I think initially he wouldn't. See, every time Aiden injected himself, the virus within him reacted to it. I think the first time Crane feels this, he'd become scared of the possibility of turning, so he'd stop using them for some time. Crane would probably side with the survivors since he doesn't have a reason to side with the PKs. Unlike Aiden, Waltz isn't his priority. This would probably lead to a confrontation between him and the PKs. So our reason for Crane to want to take out Waltz is because he'll come to realize that he is a threat to the city, and if he doesn't take him out, the city will fall. And I can kind of see Crane becoming pals with Hakan, but Hakan would probably betray him somewhere down the line. Now comes the first part with Waltz. Let's say everything leads up the same way it did in the actual stories. The PKs capture Waltz, but he shows them his strength. He breaks free and kills the soldiers. I think the fight would play out a little differently, but the result would ultimately be the same. I don't think Crane would lose instantly to Waltz, but I don't see Crane winning. So he probably dips out, realizing just how strong Waltz is. After this point, I can see Crane realizing he needs to get stronger if he wants to save the city and beat Waltz. So he'd probably resort to using the inhibitors to increase his own power. I don't know how much the inhibitors would affect him, but for this video, I think we can agree that Crane and Aiden would be on the same level in terms of strength now. I believe the inhibitors would have closed any gap between them, but in doing so, the same blackouts would begin to occur to Crane where he loses control and turns momentarily. Now we gotta talk about Lawan. Crane would more than likely beat her. I guess she was a sniper, but she used a crossbow, and I don't think Crane would struggle against her like Aiden did. You also gotta consider Crane has a whole lot more experience than Aiden. I can't believe I had even forgotten to consider this. So would Crane and Lawan become friends? Yes and no. I don't think it would be the same level as Aiden and her. They had a connection through shared trauma caused by Waltz, but I think throughout the story she might help him, or they'd possibly just cross paths again. I know I'm ignoring most of the story, but most of it is irrelevant, since most of it would have changed anyways, and the point of this video is to see if Crane would have been able to survive what Aiden did. We have now reached the climax of the video, my gooners. Crane versus Waltz. To decide who is stronger, we must first look at the mother. So technically speaking, Waltz has 4 different stages. One where we fight him on the platform, the second where we fight him on the ground. The third one is where he injects himself as an inhibitor, and the fourth where he injects himself even further. So how does the mother compare to him? It's kind of hard to really say, but if I had to give my 2 cents on it, I'd say the mother is equivalent, if not perhaps slightly weaker than stage 3 Waltz. Both had some pretty good abilities, but in terms of strength, I think they are relative, but she might be weaker due to all the experiments Walt had conducted on himself and all the added inhibitors he took before the fight. It took Beast State Crane to beat the mother, albeit he probably could have beaten her without transforming, but that was out of his control. So we can safely assume the mother is relatively close to the 3rd stage Waltz. We don't really know how much stronger Crane would have gotten if he took the inhibitors. I think he'd probably be somewhere around half his full power in the Beast State and dying like the beast. It's hard to estimate his strength without actually knowing how much stronger the inhibitors would make him. Whatever the case may be, a new argument arises. Who is stronger between their beast states? Aiden or Crane? See, I think Beast Aiden is significantly stronger than Endgame Crane for the following. I know I keep bringing this up, but Aiden is able to kill volatiles with a swipe of his hand. Endgame Kyle Crane in Dying Light the Beast isn't even able to do this. Now, Crane is much stronger because of all the GSB he took from the Chimeras, at least compared to what he was in the following. But where would this put him compared to Aiden? No answer will satisfy everybody, so the best I can say is that Crane would be somewhat weaker than Aiden when he took on Waltz. I'm not saying Endgame Crane in Dying Like the Beast is weaker than Aiden. I'm just saying Endgame the following Kyle Crane, enhanced by the inhibitors, is weaker than Aiden. So even with the inhibitors Crane took, we can assume he'd probably be weaker than Aiden, right? So how would he fare against Waltz? Well, for starters, Waltz's only winning condition would be entering his stage 4. We already established that Crane is stronger than the mother, and she is equivalent to stage 3 Waltz. So we know stage 4 Waltz is stronger than the mother, but weaker than Aiden. No enhancements from inhibitors, Crane is stronger than the mother. So who wins? Honestly, I think Crane would take the win. It wouldn't be easy, and in fact, he'd probably struggle more than Aiden did. But I think Crane would be slightly stronger than Waltz. However, Waltz would actually have a chance of winning here. But of course, Crane is the protagonist, so he'd win no matter what. I know stage 4 Waltz is a freaking monster. All his abilities and physical capabilities were maxed out during this form. The only thing keeping him from actually winning is that fact that those inhibitors would have made Crane strong enough to possibly close the gap. Yes, Waltz had experimented on himself for years to make himself stronger, while Kyle only got his powers recently. But even the mother who had her powers for a longer period of time was taken out by Crane. So there you go, Waltz was significantly stronger than all the enemies in Dying Light 1 by a large margin, but I do think Crane would have been able to come out on top. You've reached the end now. So all this is speculation and nothing is definitive. Perhaps I'm way off the ball. Maybe you think things would play out differently? So let us know in the comments what you think would happen. Also, who do you think is stronger between Aiden and Crane? Based on the beast, I think Crane might be, but if we use the stats from Dying Light 2, Aiden might be. He actually seemed kind of nerfed in the game. Either way, thanks for watching, my gooners. Like, sub, or don't as long as you enjoyed the video. Goodbye.